Welcome, everybody. I'm just back here to clear up one item. So what I will do is open the meeting. I will ask, let's say two things. One, if you did not, or were not able to print out the handouts that were emailed to you.
Rick, could you speak up?
Yeah, we have full copies of those handouts right here. If you weren't able to print them out, just say so and we'll slide them down to you so that you can look at them tonight, okay? So we have them here. The second thing I'd like to do is actually look for a motion. If everyone has read the minutes of Tuesday, March 12th, 2019 meeting, if you needed an opportunity to read them now, please do so. If not, I'd look for a motion to approve those minutes.
If I could.
Yep.
There was one thing that struck me. I think that you nominated Dino.
Yeah, Richard seconded, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we need to correct the
Yeah.
minutes to reflect
That was the only thing that jumped out.
that Ed Bertarelli nominated Dino for chairman,
Richard,
and
yeah.
Dr. Heller seconded. So as to the amendment, any discussion?
Rick, I haven't received a copy of the minutes.
Okay, all right. Do we have a copy, Mike? Could you?
There were some things the chief was going to send out. Has he done that yet?
Yes, they're right here.
I sent them to everyone's email, and I apologize if you didn't receive it. I used the email addresses they gave me, but I brought 15 copies to anyone who needed it.
That's the stuff I sent out to you, but you and Scotty.
Okay, just to recap, there was a motion to approve the minutes. After discussion, there was discussion that we need to amend the minutes to reflect that member Ed Bertarelli nominated Dino Di Bartolome as chairman and was seconded by Dr. Heller. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. First of all, a motion to amend the minutes as requested.
So moved.
I second that.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
made the motion to amend.
Motion was Dr.
Dr. Heller, I think, made the motion.
Motion, I
Mike
second.
Walsh seconded. And now I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay. And then there's one other thing. An issue was brought to town council as to whether or not the voting by secret ballot at the first meeting to elect the chairman was appropriate. It is his opinion that the matter should be addressed for transparency and to remedy any perceived or actual procedural defect by taking a vote in open session. So following his advice, I would ask, does any member move to reaffirm the selection and appointment of Dino Di Bartolome as chairman?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying yes.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Now I'll turn it over to Chairman Dino Di Bartolome.
As I said last week, thank you. Thanks again for your support of the conference. Okay? Today, Scott informed me, and I just did as well. When I sent out the email, all the information, I forgot to put 60 in the email for Scott, and I fixed that. And for Donato, I thought it was D-A-N-N something else, so I don't know what happened, but I'll fix that, okay? All right.
And I stole his email addresses, so I got them wrong too. I apologize.
Dino, while you're on that, your phone number on the list that we got of all the members with our addresses,
Yeah.
your phone number's wrong.
Okay, what's it say there?
It says, well, I corrected it, but it was 6275, and I believe it's 5275?
Yeah, 473-5275.
Yeah, but on the form,
Oh,
it's 62, so anybody,
all right, I have to check that, I had to do it. And then the other phone number is 508-361-7793, right?
36177,
93, cell phone number?
no, it looks like it's an 83 on there. Okay, so it's a 93.
You're talking to a lot of other people.
All right, nice to see everybody again. We have a, pretty good agenda. This is our second meeting, and I just want to ask a few things before we move on to the chief. Was everybody able to swear in or not yet?
Yes.
At the town clerk's office?
Yes.
Did you want the copy of the conflict?
No, I don't need those.
Amy needs that, that's all.
Yeah.
Who?
Amy, town clerk.
Amy needs that?
If you have them tonight, I'd be happy to take them.
And the other thing is the receipt of documents stating you read the conflict of interest. There were 2 sheets, okay? Those you should give to Mr. Valani also.
Yeah.
You got mine,
Yes, I do have some of them, yeah. You can always send them in or drop them off at the
Yeah.
clerk's office.
I just want to pass out something that I made copies of today. Pass those around, okay? One of the things that I learned over the past, 32 years, some of the chiefs were not that up to date with budget preparation, formulation, all the things, the complexities of the budget, and until Chief O'Loughlin came. So I think whatever we do going forward, one of the qualifications that we need, I have 3 years of budgetary information, and I think the budget now is probably over 7 million, right, Chief?
Coming up to.
Coming up. So whenever we do, need some more?
Yeah, do I have a copy?
Yeah.
Just the 3 of us here.
So you can just take a look at this at your leisure, but...
6.7.
6.7, okay. That's this year's, but it doesn't include...
Correct. Last year was higher because
Yeah.
we did some,
So in the past, we've had to bring in different people to help out, whether it be the financial analyst or the town accountant, town treasurer, with some of the budgets. But we've been very fortunate with this chief. So I think whatever we do going forward with the job description, we have to make sure that the person not only has the experience, supervisory experience, the education, the knowledge, but budget formulation, preparation, taking in all the situations that we have now with the budget. So that's most imperative. So we just have to make sure. And by looking at this, when you have leisure time, it just shows how complex this budget is. Because it's one of the biggest, besides the school department, it's one of the biggest budgets. And so, a person who comes in without budgetary experience and all that is going to have trouble. So just something to think about, okay?
it's probably the highest budget now, Dino, that as far as personnel costs versus expenses. So the budget this year is 91.7% is personnel. So, you take the school budget very large,
Yeah, it's probably about the same.
pretty close.
Pretty
but
close, yeah.
The police
Pretty
department's
close.
always been,
Yeah, it's there, I think the school budget as of, obviously mine's 12 months out of date, but it's probably about 95, so it's real close.
okay,
Yeah.
so,
Chief, in your time, there must have been some, what do I want to call it? Profound changes in the budgeting and the demands and the needs of doing it or whatever, or has it been, this process been largely the same through the years?
I mean, we built the joint communication system, where we dispatch a fire. We built that whole center with grants, myself and John Toohey. Cost the town nothing,
Yeah.
between grants and drug money. We built that whole center, no, we did. You're looking at $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Last year, the special operations, so that's a change there. This year coming, you'll see change as far as hiring some more firefighters to make sure that, those folks are safe when they're going into situations. So you get these variables and I built it in and then you build it back out based on what's coming up. I mean, as far as the budget goes, I said it last meeting, if you don't manage the budget, you can't manage the people. It's the bottom line. They come to work, earn a living. And if you don't have the funds there, and unlike the school department, this is me critical, it's the law.
Yeah.
You're locked in. So personal services are personal services, and that's why you'll see some line items are higher. For instance, you'll see higher over here on overtime for dispatchers because you get turnover, and the wages aren't higher. So one's feeding the other. When you come down to expenses, automotive maintenance and the other maintenance accounts, there's 2 of them. They're locked, they're line items that town meeting has locked. So they're separate. You can't overspend those, nor can you overspend expenses. So You literally, when all is said and done, you look at this sheet, you have 4 line items. And it's illegal to overspend them. As you all know, the only line item you can overspend in town government is clear the snow.
So nice.
So, in looking at it, as contrasted to the school budget, it's overall.
Right.
You can move money here or there.
There's one pot.
You
Spend it
can't
however you
here.
want.
There's 4 pots, and you have to live with them.
So just something to think about, and having worked with chairmen of the finance committees in the past and the members, it was real tough before, because it was always difficult when you get guidelines and parameters, and the chief was off, and so it makes it a lot easier. And, I'm sure Chris would testify to that. So just something to look at, and we'll discuss as we move forward. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the chief. He's presented us with the organizational chart, the budget process, the promotion process, and the policy of the overall department. So, Chief?
So the committee asked for information, so the organizational chart is, you can see, you have your chief of police, only because playing with PowerPoint. The deputy chief obviously is above the lieutenant, then you have the lieutenant. You come over to patrol, I broke that down for you. Aside from that, you have detectives, and I broke that out for you as well. The added is the special operations. We still do, in working with Wayside, as well as working with Riverside. So for years, I've had grants. I had grants with Riverside for 10 years, with Wayside for as many, to provide extra services to people. And the good thing that came out of that is the relationships. Wayside still works in this community, Riverside does. We have down in Hamilton Street, et cetera. So we can go pick up a counselor and take them wherever we need them. Riverside still does the hospital. So that relationship's still there. We've left it there because they rely on us and we rely on them. I gave you the job description for police chief, and contrary to what you see in the bylaw, which dates this, it asks for a master's degree, it asks for 10 years, 5 years of command supervisory experience. Now, these job descriptions were approved in 2015 by the personnel board after they hired a consultant, and they went out and looked at job descriptions and talked with the people performing the job in this community. The deputy chief requires a bachelor's degree, 10 years with supervisory experience. And then there's the other things. We all have to have the academy, driver's license, et cetera. So those things are kind of down the ancillary. They're expected. Lieutenant, interestingly enough, master's, but it's preferred. So it's not locked in. But 10 to 12 years experience versus the deputy 10 years. 7 years supervisory experience. And then lastly, I gave you the sergeant promotional and the policy that was adopted by the Board of Selectmen. So that's essentially the rules and regular department pursuant to the general laws. And that of hiring a police officer. We require an associate's degree. When we got out of civil service requires a high school diploma or a GED. We increased it, and we did so purposefully, and working with the number of young people from this community that we've sponsored through police academies. I have 4 sponsors going in. I have 1 in. We've saved millions of dollars by allowing dispatchers and special police, auxiliary police, to go to the academy. To a dispatcher, by way of example, you work 4 days on, 2 days off. They end up swapping their days. They end up working every single weekend, 2 shifts, both days, for 28 weeks. while they go to the academy Monday to Friday. So the town benefits, but they benefit. These are young people that may not have had a shot. So when we go and look at the bylaw, you know, well, a bachelor's is preferred. We require that, almost require that of entry-level police officers. And it's just a matter of dating, and Dino touched on it. That was the time. So,
So your job description resulted from when one of the personnel board brought a consultant in, they looked at, just to repeat, looked at standards in different towns.
in 2015, so they went and did their own research, and they pulled up job descriptions, comparables across the Commonwealth. They sat with me, they asked me, you know, the things that I know I do every day. That's what's in that job description. My sense of things, I think you can draw a real strong candidate pool. And I think that we should expect the best.
You know, and I think I said last week, 35 years ago, we would take people off the street and just pass the civil service test. Then when the Quinn bill came in, and then Milford said, no, we have to make sure that our officers are trained, and things weren't even as bad as they are now. It's complicated. So we had the Quinn bill. We're one of the first towns in the area to have a Quinn bill. Then the town meeting provided money for training. So all of a sudden, you had a plethora of people going for a bachelor's degree, for a master's, and above. So I think if you look at any department that is a big community like ours, I would think the educational opportunities have been provided. The officers have taken advantage of it. And, you know, I think in the past, 3 or 4 months, we've had I think a chief in Holliston, a chief in Ashland, I think one in Northbridge. And if you look at the education, that was written up in the paper, you know, the education is up there. And I think you just need that because of the diversity, the complexity of the community, the opioid situation. You know, working in a community that Milford is very diverse. So, you know, the goal 25 years ago was to bring in people who maybe spoke Portuguese or Spanish. And with Chief O'Loughlin, that's been greatly accelerated. And it helps out when things go on in the local neighborhoods and all that. And so, so education, I think, has been a big factor. Whereas at one time, you know, he became a cop. You know, I think we had a couple people from Drapers at one time who passed the test, civil service test, and all that. So now, I think things are much more different and complicated. So just something to think about.
Dino, if I may?
Yes?
Chief, just a question, looking at your organizational chart, having been in this community for over 30 years, when I came to town, and Jimmy can probably appreciate this as well, every shift had a lieutenant, sergeant, patrolman. What have you changed within the department, just so that we know moving forward? Because now, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but you don't have a lieutenant, you have a deputy chief and sergeants.
There is a lieutenant position. It's just,
Right, but what I'm saying is that the structure used to be, every shift was the same. What have you done differently that's changed that? And it works.
I actually didn't do different in one respect. The proposition was you would have a lieutenant on each shift. In a Form 2, you don't have a lieutenant on each shift across a constant. When I came here, all 3 lieutenants, 1 slot was vacant. They were all working days. So it started out 1 on each shift, and they all ended up days. You had sergeants spread across, and you spent $500,000 in overtime over the budget. You exceeded your budget by $500,000. It's a fact. So my suggestion to the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee was, and by the way, this was at a time when they took away, now we did early retirement, so Peter Vayu left, Huck Webs left, so others left. So I was not only getting crushed, but I made a recommendation. So my recommendation was promote some of the police officers to the rank of sergeant. So you have a sergeant on duty at all times. So on each shift, you have that overlap. Some nights you have 2 sergeants, every night you have 1. You're not spending overtime on sergeants. That went away. $500,000 you're not spending. So in doing that, Jim Falvey was already a lieutenant. I'm not gonna, hurt him. I mean, he's in a civil service position. I can't. And so there was the 1 lieutenant. I created a deputy chief slot because, frankly, I was the only non-civil service, non-union person in the building. I go on vacation, and you can paint the picture any way you want. It's not my first rodeo. So, I have a managed police department. So, we created a deputy chief slot. You see some variables, at one point, the deputy slot was vacant. I promote a sergeant because I need bodies. And then from there, move the lieutenant up, and you'll see if you look at today's budget that I gave to the board and to the finance committee, the difference between, if you take a look at the lieutenant salary, that's the difference between that and one of the sergeants. So the budget didn't go up. It's balanced. It's just balanced that you have the opportunity to move someone up if you so choose. So what other things changed? School resource officers, the numbers, the number of detectives, because you need investigators. And then coming over, into patrol, I look at patrol every year, and the balance is we take calls for service by the half hour across 365 days and determine how many police officers do we need to deal with this. And from there, that's where you get your balance of what you're going to put on each shift, and then the officers, they bid, they decide what shift they want to be on. I don't. It's by union contract. So I come up with the numbers based on, here's December 31st, and they'll tell you that we do it in January. And so it's calls for service, and then you still need minimums. So for instance, midnight shift. You still need a core group that if things do go a little upside down until you get help in there. So that's done every year, that evaluation of where do you put your resources. So in looking at, there have been some changes. My humble opinion, do you need a lieutenant on every shift? You don't need a lieutenant sit in the station. I don't have cops sit in the station. I did away with that. Used to be a cop on the front desk. No, you have dispatches. We created the Main Street car. So as a sector, someone walks in the station, they need a police officer. That officer's right there on Main Street. Come up and help that person. So I don't want police officers sitting in the station. I think that's a horrible waste of resources. And I most certainly don't need a lieutenant at 100,000+ sitting there to try to figure things out. Lastly, our dispatchers are awesome. They're extremely capable. They know what they're doing, and they work very, very closely with not only the police officers, but more importantly, the supervisors. Sergeants do a great job. So the balancing act in a community this size, I think we're right where we should be. It's okay to have, you have a deputy chief that can step in, the chief is on vacation, to do other administrative responsibilities. Then you have a lieutenant that, at the time, he was overseeing just patrol, the sergeant detective seeing over detectives. So I think it's a good balance.
No, it's a very good balance. Very good. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Chief.
Go ahead, Chief.
That's it?
Yeah.
Any questions for the chief?
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
As far as the educational background, ideally it would be great to have somebody with a master's degree, but what if somebody who's a chief somewhere else who doesn't have a master's degree and has years of great experience applies? Are we going to cut that person out?
My opinion, yes. I mean, in Massachusetts, if you don't find a chief that has a master's degree or better, we have the Quinn Bill.
I don't know what the Quinn Bill
Quinn
is.
Bill is state law, so if I have an associate's degree, I get 10% on my pay. If I have a bachelor's, I get 20. If I have a master's or a JD, I get 25%. If I'm here, which none of us are anymore, prior to 1976, I got 30% for that JD or master's. Everybody went to school. I increased my budget this year. We have tuition payback. So the way that works is police officer or anybody, any rank, they take a course, college course. They submit after they get their grade to us. So recently an officer, $925. We pay them back. And then that officer is going to go from bachelor's to master's. And the town will recoup that 900 by giving him 2.5% instead of 5% over a period of time. And the number of young officers coming in, they're all going to school. They're all going to school.
So basically, anybody worth their salt will be going to school and getting.
You're on our job in Massachusetts, you're not walking in the door at this level without having a master's.
Okay.
Not happening. It's to your own benefit. It's 25%.
Edward?
I think the chief mentioned this about, my memory serves me, at the first meeting. It'd be great to get either the HR person, which we're going to talk about later, or someone to get samples of whatever number of years we're going to look back to, requirements and everything of people who fill police chiefs' jobs in the state, to see a sample as what the average one looked like, so we'd have something to look at, as a templates or whatever, and look at them and get your advice on them or whatever, because I'm sure each town vetted certain requirements or whatever.
But they're in the job descriptions, Ed. I mean, they're already there. They went out and did it, the personnel board. So the personnel board said, if you're going to be the chief here in Milford, it's in the job description.
Yeah.
10 years experience, 5 years command supervisory experience. That's in the job description.
I'm just wondering, I'd just like to see some towns, cities and towns, what they wrote as far as that. I mean, this is very valid, but I'm just saying, just to get a
Well,
picture.
if they already did it,
Yeah.
I respect what you're saying, but I'm just curious why we want to reinvent the wheel if they already.
No, I'm not. I think it's just, well, just like you gave us the material on the organization and everything, which is going to be real helpful in filling this stuff out. I just like to see just, variance in towns our size or a junior city or whatever. People did advertise just to see what they look like.
Scott, then Richard.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So along those same lines, I guess one of the questions I would have for you, Chief, just certainly understanding and coming from the personnel board, it was done in 2015. How would you say your role has changed just in the last 4 years since that was done? Obviously, the administrative budget piece, obviously that piece probably hasn't changed dramatically in their process, but some of the things that you're facing as a chief, some of the things that your department's facing in the last 4 years.
People dying, opioids.
So just thinking about that.
Writing grants,
Yeah.
sitting writing grants. And I spend a lot of time writing grants with Amy Leon. Otherwise, you're not going to provide the services. Narcan and police cars. Trade-off with a union. So you deal with labor relations, what's the trade-off for those folks administering Narcan? And the trade-off was I provided them with tourniquets, I provided them with clotting materials, which all cost, money.
Yeah.
But that was the trade-off. So it was their self-preservation and the preservation of others as a balance in that. Other communities, Natick by way of example, protracted litigation about the issue of Narcan. We were the 5th community in the state. And if you look at the number of people, not necessarily that live here, that are here at the time when they overdose. Because we get people, they drop them right in front of the hospital. Before that staff gets out there, people are already calling us. We're there before they come out. You know, instead of having 5 people, 10 people die, the numbers would be staggering.
Yeah, so I mean, I think along those same lines, and certainly, obviously dealing with the opioid epidemic, which is a whole different conversation. I think, and one of the things you actually touched on, I think, you know, the grant writing component, as we start to formulate that job description, absolutely the personnel board, the job description exists right now. In reviewing it, there's nothing in there that I saw specifically as it results to grant writing experience. That may be something that we want to look at when we think about some possible adjustments to the job description. It's starting to include some
We
of
have
that.
juvenile issues, you know, when you're dealing with young kids, you know, you had the reform that the legislature put through, reform in criminal justice, and change a number of laws related to juveniles. And what's the impact on the schools? What's the impact outside the schools, but primarily inside the schools? You know, the young person who was a disruption to the schools, and maybe violent disruption, you know, disrupting school assembly doesn't exist.
Right.
And a number of others. So, you know, the offices, it's really been a balancing act in how you get things accomplished.
So I think, you know, certainly you guys face, you and your entire department face an unbelievable amount each day. I think as we continue on our charter, as far as formulating that job description, I think looking at certainly what we've got right now, it's absolutely all spelled out. But to Ed's point, some of the other points made earlier, do we look at how other towns have posted recent, I think it's important to look at how other towns have recently posted chief of police positions, looking at things like grant writing, maybe even just looking at the language. How are they worded? How are they building that in so that we can start to sort of parcel together if we want to make some recommendations to the personnel board for adjustments for some of the current job descriptions. Grant writing being, grant writing interactions with the components of that nature.
Richard?
Yeah, just some historical background. I was talking with my brother, Attorney Warren Heller. Warren was on the last police chief study committee, and he happened to stop by tonight. I haven't really had a chance to look at, but he found his notebook with all the information. And one of the things that they did, and I'm just throwing it out, that they had hired a retired police chief that there's different organizations out there that come in and consult and will do a lot of the legwork type of thing that we're talking about here tonight. And even placement of where you place the ads and everything else. I just quickly looked, and it looked like they spent about $20,000 back in 2001, so I'm sure it's more money now. But he said there was money well spent as far as, you know, what they had with this individual. And so I just think it's something that we ought to do. The other thing that he did, and I'll get a copy to you, Dino, that I think might be important, is that they have a timeline of when they did what, when they started the process, and it started actually in January, and then we I guess, inaugurated you or appointed you in June of that year. So it was about a 5-6 month process. So, I'll get you a copy, but I think it's just something as a timeline type of thing that would be of interest to all of us to see what kind of a situation we're looking at. And it kind of worked for then. Again, like, we don't want to necessarily reinvent the wheel if we've got,
Scott, if you look at number 6 on the police chief job description, as far as essential functions, and it speaks to the grants, speaks to seeking grants.
Yeah, financial grants system.
There we go, okay.
And I talked-
As opposed to grant rating, that's what I was.
Well, I talked to Maureen, in drawing up the job description, if you're too precise,
Yeah,
You
no, that's fair.
you box yourself out if you're, that's an essential function. Yeah, I just want to point that out.
Yeah, no, I'd seen the Seeks grants, but I saw the differentiation between seeking versus grant writing, which I do think is a specialized skill. Could be proceeded to specialized skill, and maybe it's not something that's in the essential functions. Maybe it's something that's in the recommended minimum qualifications, and
I
just
would agree.
something like that.
Before we get to Donato, I just want to say, during the past week, I spoke to the HR person at Town Hall, Marie, very good, done a lot of good things, and I asked her, I think Jody has an interest, so Jody and Maureen are going to get together. Because I think there are some things maybe missing on ADA requirements, some other things, but they're going to look at that and then touch base with the chief to make sure that, going in the right direction. I've also asked the administrator to maybe get us 2 or 3 job advertisements that have been in the newspaper the past 3 or 4 months, so we'll have that. But like I said, you give Maureen a call and work with the chief and all that. Anything that, needs changing, we'll decide, and then it has to go to the personnel board for their approval. So our next meeting is on the 9th, and I'm not to be a rush job, but I think the personnel board is meeting on the 10th.
Okay.
If the committee needed a couple of more weeks, Scotty, you think we could have a meeting at the end of April with the personnel board?
Oh, certainly, yeah. I mean, so our regularly scheduled meetings are the second Wednesday of every month.
Okay.
We meet every
But
month.
if you need something differently, we
Yep,
could.
if we need, yeah, and the committee's already said if there's anything that relates to personnel matters that requires a special meeting, that, we're certainly, we'll do everything in our
Because we
power.
want to do it right. Most of it is in there, but, a few things could have happened, changed in 4 years, or maybe not put in. But, we'll recapture it. Donato?
Our function in the bylaw is to come up with about 5 names of people that we're going to interview. Then from that, we're going to forward a group of names to the Board of Selectmen. There are firms that do all of this. They're made up primarily of retired police officers, police chiefs. They will take the bylaw, they will advertise the position, they will do all of the interviews, they'll do the background checks, they'll do everything for us and present us with these 5 names, and we can interview those people. The cost of that, I have no idea. I can tell you 20 years ago when I was on the committee, was someplace around $10,000, so I would guess it's $50,000 by now. It's something to be considered. I don't think we should go that way, but it's something to be considered. Another thing is that the advertisements for police chiefs 20 years ago were in specific documents. The police advertisements for police chiefs were advertising something called the Beacon, and there were several others in my notes that I recognize, all which the chief of police and Jim would know, I imagine, but I'm sure they're websites by now. They could pull off a dozen, 2 dozen advertisements for chiefs of police with 50-man police forces across the country, and we could get a general idea of what the ad is all about, and we could adjust it for ourselves. It's not a complicated process here. Out of that advertisement, we'll go out and we'll give them 30 days or 60 days to reply to us. And believe it or not, you will get primarily police chiefs from across the country that want a job here in Massachusetts, because we pay our police officers twice as much as any other place in the country. So everybody wants to come to Massachusetts and retire and make $150,000 as opposed to the $90,000, $80,000 they're making in Wyoming. So there's not going to be any problem getting applicants and qualified applicants, people with 10, 15 years experience. That's not the issue. I think one of our primary moves now is to develop an ad and find out where we're going to put that ad, and I would ask Dino to probably ask Jim and the chief to come up with those locations. Where do we advertise for chiefs of police? Give us a half a dozen or a dozen advertisements, get them back to us so we can take a look and we can move on. Another comment is, we've been quizzing the chief of police here about whether he's a grant writer or a budget guy. We're dealing with a $150,000 executive. I think he's one of the highest paid guys. If we've got him making budgets and writing grants, he ain't no chief executive, all right? We have people that do that. We have a guy on the finance committee that sits down, he can come up with a budget for us. We can have people that are grant writers. You don't tag, in my opinion, a $150,000 chief executive to do these menial tasks. And we got to keep that in our minds. We're talking about a CEO here. We no longer pay the police chief $25,000 and expect him to go out on the street. We are paying a chief executive a hell of a lot of money, and he's supposed to be an executive, not a guy on the street and not a guy writing grants and doing budgets, in my humble opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Chief?
I haven't spoken yet. When you get a chance.
Yeah, after the chief. Go ahead, Tom.
Dan, I appreciate your view. There is no one on the finance committee that develops a budget. They don't develop a single budget in this community. Every budget is developed by the department head. I sat with the fire chief in my subcommittee today. He develops his budget, I develop mine. I manage my budget every day. And that's why, as Dino will tell you, my budget comes out good on the end of the year. I said it last meeting, I firmly believe, you want to fail as a police chief, mess with the taxpayers' money. You mess that up, you're done. As far as grant writing, if you don't sit and write the grants, if I don't sit with Amy Leone and put them together, it's not going to be done. There is no grant writer in this community. None. The last grant writer was Sue Clark, CDBG, to do work downtown. But I'm not disagreeing with you. Should there be someone that's their focus? How do I bring money into the community through grants? I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've managed agencies where I had a budget director, and I monitored that budget with that person. You don't have that in this community. And frankly, to give you a sense, same size department when I managed the Wellesley Police Department, same situation, not different. Smaller departments, Wayland, same thing. When I worked in the city, the housing police, same thing. Somebody, that was your responsibility, it was part of your responsibilities. Larger agency like the transit police, I had a budget director and I had 2 assistants. And they managed the money and they gave me updates every week. So it is just a different situation. I appreciate your view, I do, but I'm just letting you know this is what the reality is in Milford. I don't know of a single department, to include the schools, they have a finance person, given the size, but
it's actually the 7-member board that's responsible for the budget.
but I think that she's it, right?
Yeah, she's it.
Yeah.
So with a
She manages the
budget, with a
day-to-day.
budget that size, so I know my friend Bill too, he came in today, he developed the budget. I started 0 and I build each person in. I go back and look at 3 years of expenses and figure out where I'm going next. And I look at it every day, but I appreciate everything you said, trust me. I wish I had the help.
Sure. Jim?
Wow, yeah, just based on how you started out, you were kind of looking at history and how things have changed today. Well, you remember you appointed me 35 years ago, and it was really a simplified job back then. And we didn't have the resources that we have today, and frankly, no police department in Massachusetts did. It's just as the times moved on, the job became more difficult. Resources, additional resources were needed. And for the first 5-7 years of my career, into the early 90s, we had a lack of supervisors. I think when Chief O'Loughlin came in, we had 5 or 6 at the time with the 3 lieutenants position, but only 1 one lieutenant at the time because they had moved on. And the Board of Selectmen itself was like, we got a totem pole here and we need supervision. Now, I'd go to work on a midnight shift and there'd be 3 police officers, no supervisor. And the senior-most police officer would act as the supervisor, and they get another $8 in his paycheck for being a supervisor that day. And the other 2 people, you got that half of the time and this half of the time. And then we were driving cruises that had 192,000 miles on it with tires falling off. And former chief in Liberto started, really looking into equipment. And the Quinn bill, which is was a bill that put out there to in the end, have a very well-educated police force in Massachusetts. Because frankly, back then, you come out of high school, you were a mechanic, or you got out of the military, and usually it was like former military guys, and it still is. But military guys today are way more educated than they were back in the day. And so, the evolution of the police department has come an unbelievable way to where we talk about the last 4 years, very complex now. And you really have to know the science of it. And you're going to find, as Dan and a few others said, very, very well qualified candidates out there. They're going to come from everywhere. As you found in 2001, as we found in 1999 when the very first committee came up. They're going to come from everywhere, and they are qualified. Now, my only caution to that is, we have a unique community here, and our community is very close together, and everybody works well together. And we have, especially the police department, in our own way, have really gotten into the community. There's a fabric there that took a long time to develop. And the job we require for new officers today is, again, just nothing compared to years ago. And we're in the schools, we're in the hospital, we're in the churches. And people trust us. You just look at social media, and compared to 30 years ago to today, where we were hated, they throw bottles at us, driving up Ruby Ave, they love us, they trust us, and they're getting the product they deserve. Now, my only process is thought process when it comes to these very, very qualified candidates that are going to come on paper. If a guy's in charge of the city of 200,000 people and he's got 180 people under him, how well embraced is he with the community? Is he out there, or is he just managing people and he delegates, people manage? I mean, in Milford, we have a thumb on the pulse of this community. And what a difference that makes. People trust us. And so that's an aspect that I think we have to keep going forward with the next police chief, as well as the intricacies of the new laws and all the different things that are coming our way nowadays. And so now we have 9 supervisors, so they're always available. You've got the deputy chief, the lieutenant, and it works pretty good. And the poor chief doesn't always have to do all his own grants. He delegates authority, but some of the grants that he's had to help write for the community projects, I mean, were extremely difficult, and that's where his knowledge comes in. Now, I write 2 grants a year for a state 911 department that helps keep the dispatch center going with the funding. And I've been doing that since 2010. Deputy Chief Falvey right now has a certain amount of highway grants that, help us go and put extra people on the streets during, New Year's, seatbelt safety, and all of that. So there's other grants for you. You don't have to be an expert. And I agree with what Danny says. I mean, that grant writing thing is just, if you're the CEO and you don't understand it, then how are you going to make sure your people are doing anything? So I think, all in our own way, we're all looking for the same thing here. And, we're a wealth of knowledge. I've been working there, as I said, going on 35 years, and I've seen it all. So if anybody has any personal questions or needs some information, gladly, we're going to do that. Sure. And I don't think, again, Dan alluded to that, the mailings and the whatnot, it's been done before. It's being done in a lot of communities. This is our 3rd time at it. We know where we're going to publish and how to publish. And the question is the funding. We're going to be able to get a budget here.
Yeah, we will.
$20,000.
Thank you, Jim.
Because as soon as we get that, then we can move on with publishing and doing that. But until then, we're just going to sit here and talk.
Let me just give you some information on that. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jim. I spoke to the finance director, and 20 years ago, I think he said the budget was like $20,000. okay, 20 years ago. And I don't think they appropriated all the monies, but then the monies go back. So he and I talked, and I know the selectmen will be supportive, and the finance committee will be. So I'm looking at a figure, I think we should ask for $50,000 at the town meeting in May. So in other words, that money won't be available till about 10 days after town meeting. We do have some monies in the selectmen's budget, and probably the finance committee can help out also a little bit as far as advertising if we need that beforehand. But the monies, most of the money, 50,000, if the people vote for it, we could have about a week after town meeting. You have to wait 7 days. So if we do anything big, we're gonna have to wait till that time. But we can get all the preparation ready and everything, the postings, the job advertisements and all that. And as far as advertisements, Danny mentioned a couple of things. Like I just did some, preliminary research. Like there's this new thing called Indeed. I never heard about it, but I guess Indeed, and even the HR person told me that's very widely used. The Boston Globe is a national circulation. The Municipal Association, the BCAP, that's looked at in a great way. The Police Chief Association, the chief will have information on that, and there might be some other ideas that the committee
The
has.
internet's changed so much.
Right.
The other place would be LinkedIn, the other place.
So the main thing on that, if we put it like in the Globe, that might be $1,500. Some of the other things might be free. So we'll have money for that. The Boston, the Municipal Association, I think it's like $800 to put something in. So that's not a lot of money, but we'll have money for that. But as far as, contacting the firm to do the background checks and all that stuff, we're gonna have to wait until town meeting to get that money. Yeah.
At the last meeting, Chris said something about them. If the town meeting appropriated, we would have to wait till the beginning of the fiscal year, but that's not the case?
No.
10 days.
Well, I'm just asking.
10 days after town meeting.
Okay.
I think town meeting is
On an article.
21st, 20th, May.
Yeah.
All right, good, all right, thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
The budget, you have to wait till July 1st. If it's an article.
So I think by that time, we'll be ahead of the game. We'll be ready for it.
Yeah,
Richard and Donato.
Yeah.
Richard,
we can do some preliminary. We might not be able to, but we could interview some firms beforehand and decide, and get budgets from them or costs from them and decide, so that once we get the funding, then we can, hit the ground running, sign a contract or whatever. But, so I don't think we should be waiting until, May, what's the date of the town meeting? May
21st, I
21st or whatever, 21st, somewhere in there. So, I think that we should, if we're going to go that route, to get some assistance from some of these firms. And like I said, the last chief search committee utilized them, and I guess they were, found them to be very helpful and useful. And I'm sure we can, customize it to what we want from them, so that there might not be, well, we have an HR person now and we have different things that we already might have, but they can then guide us in the proper way to do this, and they have, outreaches also.
sure. Donato?
You threw out a figure of $50,000.
I don't know if that's enough, I don't know.
No, I realize that. That's the point of my question. I think we can very simply go through the list of what we are responsible for, but we've got to get estimates before we say $50,000. And it's as simple as identifying the areas that we're responsible for and calling these people up and asking them what it costs to do a background investigation, what it costs to do a medical exam, to administer the psychological test, and get those figures. But I came up with the same figure, $50,000.
And if you look at the bylaw, thanks, Danny, on page 368, it says, select 6 finalists and require of each physical examination, psychological, agility test. And then once that's done, we narrow it down to 4 or 5 people, and then a in-depth background investigation to be conducted by a recognized professional investigating service, and then oral interviews. And then along with that, there might be a situation where we go out and maybe interview some candidates in different areas. So there's a lot involved, but, like, for example, when the chief was interviewed, we went to Boston at the MBTA. We interviewed a gentleman in Ashland, we interviewed a gentleman in Andover, you know, and it was quite interesting. And once the applications start coming in, you really be able to tell, after a while, who the men and women we want to interview, and maybe some of the others just passed in an application because the money's good and whatever. So we'll get all that done, and we'll continue to get information. When Jody and Maureen will meet, they'll be able to give us some information, bring it back to the committee. As chief, you don't have to go too far to find out what's going on as far as information on the professional level. He can give us information as well. But the budget, there'll be an article at town meeting. It'll be around $50,000, and that money will be available for the committee to expend 10 days after town meeting. We'll have some monies available in the selectmen's budget and also the administrator's budget to do advertising, you know, to pay for the Globe or whatever the case may be. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Monday the 20th, Dino.
Okay,
Monday the 20th,
okay.
May 20th.
Okay, chief, want to continue? What else you need?
Up next, Mr. Chairman, is choosing the date for the tour.
Yeah, I wanted to just throw it out, imagine having a tour of the police station.
We're going to meet at 6 o'clock
At the police station.
at the police station.
For a tour. And then following that, we would have our regularly scheduled meeting.
Got it. Thanks.
Location to be determined at
Okay.
7 o'clock.
If we can, all right, if we can do it at the police station with the open meeting law.
Absolutely.
Then we'll do it. If not, we'll have it 7 o'clock here.
That's the
All
9th
right,
and
and if
6th.
somebody can't make the tour, then we'll have another scheduled time
Yeah.
working with the chief.
Good, great. All right.
Got that, Chris? You're doing a good job as secretary, you know.
You don't know that yet.
Well, you're getting paid big money, so.
Yeah, right, exactly.
All right, so we got that. Okay, I mentioned about the HR professional, working with Jody. Anything on the other business? Okay, the next meeting will be Tuesday, April 9th, at 7, and there'll be a tour of the police station at 6 o'clock. Is that okay, chief?
Absolutely.
Yes, Dan?
I don't think we've addressed, are we going to get copies of advertisements? And are we going to identify where these advertisements go from the two police guys?
I'm trying to give as much information.
We got 2 guys here, in fact, I think we got 3.
Yeah. Jody?
So just I've already started doing some research online and found
Everybody's attention, please.
where positions for chiefs are posted in the state and out of state, and started collecting them. I'm going to continue to do that.
I'm sorry.
No, I just said that I've already started doing research online, found websites that they have, you know, different positions, many chiefs of police posted, and I'm collecting them.
Good, thank you.
Jody, could you get costs for us?
Costs,
Of what does it cost going to these
okay,
sites? If it's 0, that's fine.
typically
Chief,
there's some cost.
and you can get us the Police Chiefs Association.
Yeah, the primary is going to be the International Association Chiefs of Police, Police Executive Research Foundation, ICALEA, which is University College for Police Chiefs, Mass Chiefs, obviously. And,
MMA.
Yeah, MMA, the Beacon, so,
That's about 800, but,
That's
I
the
mean-
point, that's nothing.
no, Globe is.
To get quality, to get quality.
Some of them have to be national now, because that's the
correct.
requirement.
That's, IACP is national, PERF is national.
Nickel and dime things.
And then you do have to advertise locally, so you're going to have to look at the other news.
Thank you. Good.
We're going to do visits.
All right.
I'm going to put in some reports.
Okay, so no other business? Motion for adjournment? Moved by Mike, second by Eddie. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Good night, thank you.